So my name is Matthew Zawadzki. I was born in Poland, in Krakow, in 1930. At the time where my story begins, I was living in Sosnowiec, which is a southwestern part of Poland. Anyway, it was 1942, and the war already started. We were under occupation, and at 4 o'clock in the morning, there was a knock on the door, and 3 gentlemen in police uniform were there, and they said, "You have 20 minutes to pack whatever you can carry. You are being evicted," which was a surprise to us. Anyway, Mel was running around in circles. She packed a small suitcase, and I just grabbed the money, family jewels, and a traveling alarm clock, and put it in a pocket of my school overcoat. It might be worthwhile mentioning the school overcoat was of unusual design. It was navy blue, full coat, big pockets. So I put all the valuables in the pockets. After the 20 minutes, we were taken to a truck and conveyed to the railway station. As we entered the waiting room, there was a coat hanger there. So I took my coat off, put it on the hanger. So when I was examined, there was nothing in my pockets. Anyway, we were there till late afternoon, and the Germans were being very meticulous. Since our surname started with Z, we were the last ones to be processed. The first 3 train loads went to Auschwitz. And by the time we were loaded on the train, the sidings at Auschwitz were full. So we continued on. We finished up in a place called Freistadt. And just outside there was a concentration camp especially open for us. It was an old Austrian barracks for, I think, cavalry. And it was old, it was decrepit, but it would do for the inmates. After a week there, someone said, "Oh, there is your father outside." So mother was then on a mission to clean up Freistadt with a broom and whatnot, street cleaning. And I was in the camp. So I went to the fence. I saw my father there, and I had a wad of money. By today's standards, would be about $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. And by the time it was nicely compacted. So I took one of my shoelaces off, tied one end onto the money, and gave it a twirl, and it sailed over the fence. Which was quite okay, I think, because the prohibition was that parcels should not be chucked over the fence. So it went the other way. Anyway, it landed within proximity there. My father took it up, and that is the last time I saw him. Sometime later, 5 or 6 gentlemen arrived, beautifully dressed, and they had an unusual presence about them. And we were all lined up, and selection for the race program. Okay, So we all like lined up. The way went along and said you, etc. And they missed out on selecting a girl that was absolutely beautiful. She had rosy cheeks and curly blonde or golden blonde hair, and she was rejected. I don't know why. Anyway, a few days later we are packed on transport of some sort, trucks I think, and taken over to Ratibor, another camp. And there was an influx of people selected from other camps as well. So we underwent further sort of elimination process. Those who didn't qualify were sent to Germany as forced laborers. And Mother and I were sent to Litzmannstadt, or Łódź in Polish terminology. There we have undergone a variety of tests. I was tested for RH factor, that was 1942. And RH factor didn't appear on the medical horizon in Australia until 1947. Anyway, there were a variety of tests. One that caught my attention was quite interesting. There were a number of features on the list, and the interviewer merely looked at me and underlined. And by the time he finished, took approximately half an hour or thereabouts, my perfect profile appeared. It was quite impressive. Anyway, a few days later, I was invited to the august presence of some gentlemen. When I entered the room, there was a chair by the door. I sat down, and along a long table, 12 or 13 of them. The youngest in rank would have been in Lieutenant General. So I have been advised that I had the highest score of racial purity ever recorded, over 90%, 93 or 97%. I said, well, that's nice. And I've been advised as a token of recognition, I am offered the highest education in the Reich, Third Reich can offer, which was the Adolf Hitler School in Potsdam. And I sort of looked at them, I said, well, yes. And I said, can my mother come with me? Oh no, this is a boarding school for boys. I said, in this case, I must decline. I expected a kick in a backside. As it happened, my declining of the offer has been accepted without a murmur. Just one of them at the end, I remember the left-hand side, stood up and he said, may I inquire why you reject this offer? I said, sure. So since the war, Mother and I are the only family survivals. And at the moment, I would not like to leave my mother. Okay. That has been accepted without a single murmur. The respect that they have shown me is something that I haven't experienced since the beginning of the war. Nevertheless, they accepted what I had to say, what my decision was. He said, in this case, you'll be transferred to Frankfurt. So the next day, Mother and I were given travel documents, put on a train, all by ourselves. And on the way took Leipzig. Now Leipzig was then the biggest railway station in Europe. It was a focal point of all trains. There were dozens of terminals there. Mother has been there before the war, and he said, how are we going to find the train to Frankfurt? We didn't have to worry about it. We arrived about 11 o'clock at night, and even before the train stops, 3 young persons, 2 males, 1 female in uniform, found us, picked our luggage, and when the train stopped, we exited. We are taken to an eatery. Food was very short in Germany, always, and particularly so in wartime. However, we were given something warm to eat, and we were taken to the platform where our train was to Frankfurt. So we were shown our seats, made comfortable, they exited, and the train took off. I fell asleep. Well, it was in the middle of the night. We arrived in Frankfurt. It's early daylight. I can't recall exactly the time, probably 6 or 7 a.m. And we're found by the gentleman dressed very elegantly in a brown suit, a brown overcoat, brown hat, and the only thing distinguishable was a little button on his lapel. And being 12 years old and very curious, I had a look at it, and it said Gauleiter Hessen-Nassau. Now, Gauleiter is synonymous with our concept of governor. So he spoke fluent Polish. Mother was delighted. So she said, "You are Polish?" I says, "No, madam, I am German. I just happen to speak Polish." So he took us to an old hotel, a sort of pension. They didn't provide any meals, so we were shown where to go about a block away to an eatery where people there didn't speak very much except from greetings and a famous word, Mahlzeit, which translated into English was nice eating. And we stayed there for about 2 weeks. We have introduced to our Polish families, so we had company. And mother became very ill. Now, the doctor who visited her, he couldn't form a diagnosis. So maybe the climate is not suitable for her. So again, we're given travel documents to travel to Ulm, which is about 200 kilometers south. And from Ulm to Scheltelgen. It was a little sort of town, little village. And mother looked at the destination and she said, "Not another camp." But this one, the gates were open, there was no barbed wire. And after about a week or 10 days, we and 3 other families were allocated a place in a place called Niederstottingen, a village which then comprised about 300 houses. So it was a very, very small village. Anyway, it boasted a castle. That castle was built around about 1200. So it's fairly ancient. Mind you, the moat was filled in and all the rest, and we were given accommodation there. Next day, Mother and I were extracted from this and given accommodation by a lady who was also a foreman or forewoman in the factory where Mother was going to work. And we got a room in her house. She took Mother to work in a Hartmann factory in Niederstotzingen, which was walking distance away. And Mother was employed making sanitary napkins, as they were fashionable in them days. And I was left alone in the house with a husband who then was probably well over 70. And he was a doddering old man. And nothing very much to do. But she had a gramophone. So I wound it up, put the record on, rapid movement to the beginning, and fizzing out at the end. That means the governor wasn't working. So I have made a friend with a semi-retired blacksmith not far away, across the laneway, borrowed a screwdriver, disassembled the gramophone, found the governor, fixed it, and it was playing. In the meantime, the old man said, "Oh, she won't like it." I didn't pay very much attention to him. So anyway, I fixed the gramophone. I was playing the records, and some of which I still remember, or at least part of it. So after nightfall, Mother and this lady, I call her Tante Kleiber, they arrived, and he, Mr. Kleiber, very wisely parked himself behind the door. "Oh," he says, "she won't like it." And I was playing the records. Anyway, the door opened, they walked in, and there was a look of fury in her, something I haven't seen before or since. And somebody touched her prized possession. Well, I didn't pay very much attention to it, but then she realized in a moment's notice that I fixed the gramophone. It's playing. So from a devil she changed into an angel in a matter of few seconds. And the old man was standing behind the door and shaking. Anyway, she realized that I fixed her prized possession. So she said, "Well, I shouldn't be staying at home with an old man. I should go to school." All right. So the school consisted of one classroom. I think there were about maybe 20 children there. It was the first class was in the front, and the top class was at the back. So I went to the school, and in a month or two, I have exceeded the school's curriculum. So the suggestion of the teacher, and I sat for an entrance exam in the high school in Ulm. So I went, sat for the exam, I passed, I was accepted, and I was going to start next semester. By the time we had a house for ourselves, not an old house, it was an old village, but it was accommodation, were just separate from others. So a letter arrived, rather official ones, would, my mother and I, please present ourselves in Stuttgart at the offices of the chief of the SS and police for southwest Germany. Travel documents were enclosed, and there was no difficulty about getting a leave of absence from the factory. So we went to Stuttgart. We found the place, and it was like a cross between a villa and a castle, a huge thing, double door. As we approached, the double door opened. Then you had the ceremonial guard on either side, like you see with the King and Queen of England. And all they presented arms, and Mother and I mean, I was 12. Mother wasn't very much bigger than I. We just walked straight through. So at the end of it, the double door opened, we were invited in, and eventually we were ushered into the august presence of the chief for SS and police for the whole southwestern section of Germany. His name was Grotz, and he was in his 40s, I guess, and his adjutant or aide de camp, his name was Hartmann, I think. He was an older man, grey hair, and to cut the long story short, he said, well, you have applied for the high school in Ulm. I said, yes, I did. Well, we can't let you go there. You have rejected the highest school in the Third Reich, the Adolf Hitler School in Potsdam. And we would like you to get an education, the best education the Third Reich can offer. But it has to be in one of our schools. Ah, yes. And where is the nearest one? Münster. I said, that's about 600 kilometers away. He says, that's correct. So you have a choice either to accept the boarding school at Münster or nothing. But he said, don't rush into it. Have a holiday. Travel around, make up your mind. So we issued with travel documents, which allowed us to travel anywhere we liked. And we went to the Bodensee area, got onto the ferries. There was one town, Koblenz, I think, that was part German, part Swiss. And we were just meandering around, walking in the middle of the road. The barrier was up, so we just went through. And after about 100 meters or thereabouts, we realized we were in Switzerland. So we stopped. I looked at Mother. She looked at me. She said, shall we go back or shall we go on? And we decided to turn around and come back. Anyway, we traveled around Linz, München, Innsbruck. And in Linz, Mother had a friend who came from Sosnowitz. He was in the same boat as we were. And she sort of got his idea on the subject. And I remember him saying that education, no matter what it is, doesn't hurt anyone. And I said, Matthew is old enough to remember where he came from. His daughter was about 6 at the time. Anyway, we came back home, had a thought about it. Mother had work, we had a house, so also her German was very, very weak, almost non-existent. I felt that she can be left alone. She had company. Not the company of her choice, admittedly, but nevertheless, it wasn't a camp environment. So we went back to Stuttgart, and I accepted the offer. So eventually, Mother took me over to Münster. She traveled with me. And the school was taken over from a nunnery. It was quite a substantial building. And I was enrolled there, enlisted. Instead, the Mother came back. The environment in the school, well, it was a boarding school. But Münster was at the crossroads of the Allied aircraft from Britain. Now, almost every night there was an air raid, and we had to go to the cellars. I realized that they are not going to bomb Münster, so I stayed in bed. And after a week or 2 or 3, one of the boys realized that no matter how hard he ran after the all clear, Matthew was already in bed asleep. Well, they put 2 and 2 together, and they realized I never went to the cellars. So I earned myself a nickname, Prince Eugen, which is a parody on the song in the memory of a valiant German prince. After a while, one night, we had, incidentally, the room that we were in was originally an auditorium, I think, and our beds were there. It was getting a bit cold, but we had downlights just illuminated approximately 1.5 meters, 2 meters of floor space. And one evening, 4 boys decided to teach me a lesson. What the lesson was, I wasn't quite sure. But it surrounded me. So one was twirling a belt with a heavy steel buckle. So had they attacked me one at a time, I would have taken the punches. But 4 and a heavy buckle on the belt was something that was not quite acceptable. So being 4 of them, something snapped in me, and an old training that I had with my cousins came out. And one of them was the recipient of it. It was, what the actual movement was, I can't recall. It's hidden somewhere deep in my subconscious. But it was the left hand, open-handed, and just a jab. Well, this boy disappeared from a circle of light, never to be seen again. Another one grabbed me from behind, pinning my hands together and sort of keeping them in a bear hug. I utilized that to lift both of my legs up and kick another boy in the chest. I remember seeing him doing a reverse somersault across the bed, and he disappeared. Now, while in the bear hug and having my feet on the ground, his hands gravitated to my face, and I felt the fingers on my mouth. So I opened my mouth, his finger came into my mouth, and I bit on it, and I bit hard. And he started yelling. The one with the buckle vanished, but I wouldn't let go. Anyway, after a while, one of the teachers came and very gently persuaded me to let go, which I did. By the time I was crying, and the tears were absolutely streaming out of just fury, just overcharged with some hormones or another. Anyway, he said, let's go and see the headmaster. The headmaster had a cane, so I am going to be caned, and I did not like corporal punishment of any kind. So I was being led by him, crying, bitter tears just streaming out of me, and brought into the august presence of a headmaster, who asked the teacher to sort of go out of the room. And I was still crying. And through my tears, I saw him crying too, the headmaster. I said, well, wait a minute, two of us can't be crying at the same time. So I wiped my tears to see what's happening. And there was this fellow, the headmaster, on his knees in front of me, begging forgiveness, and would I please not report this incident to Hauptstoffe and Graz. I had no such inclination. Well, I said, okay. I didn't realize the value that I had, or they put upon me. So the headmaster said, it will never ever happen again. What happened to the four boys, I don't know. I haven't seen them since. Anyway, eventually we translocated to Czechoslovakia. And but before then, I realized why they did not want me to go to ordinary high school, because they had some other teaching subjects. One of them was race. Now, at this ripe old age of 13, I learned the difference between race and nationality. I have learned that Germany, which had 57, 58 million people, only about it had 11 races, and only about 15% of the population would qualify for a race project. Now, that was interesting because the whole race program was sort of revealed to me. What was the idea behind it? Now, they call it the Aryan race. They have, as only a small percentage of Germans would qualify for it, contrary to the propaganda minister, Mr. Goebbels, or Dr. Goebbels, who regarded all Germans as being part of the so-called master race, Herrenvolk. So the idea behind it was that there are areas in Europe, especially Eastern Europe, along the Vistula and the Volga rivers, where elements of this Aryan race remain. Now, that was before the time that the genome was unraveled. So everything was done on a sort of appearance level. So the original Aryan race existed somewhere in the north, what now is Scandinavia. They have departed long time ago. They were known as Goths. And the first migratory phalanx went east to India, hence the creation of the Indo-European race. The second phalanx went south, and the consequence was the Greek flowering. Socrates, Archimedes, Pythagoras, and others. The third is better documented. They were known as Vandals. They provided a barrier between the Romans and the Germanic unruly tribes. And eventually they went to what is now known as France, Spain, and to northern Africa. Now, there was something interesting about the Goths. Also, they conquered where they went. They did not destroy the culture that was there. They enhanced it, which was very unusual. So, the theory behind it was that the breeding back the purity of the race will create a group of people who are constructive rather than destructive. Now, a concept that in the middle of the war was rather strange. But in Germany itself, there's a lot of inbreeding, a lot of cripples, mentally and physically. Every village had a cripple. Even the village where I was living, 300 houses, perhaps 1,000 people. They had a cripple. He was a village tailor. So this knowledge was not taught in ordinary high schools. Anyway, apart from that, we also taught table manners. We were being taught how to eat and what the table manners are across Europe. The French, the British, the Italians, etc. And each one had its own difference. So we had all the cutlery next to the plate for one particular session, and just the necessary utensil for another session. And after a few weeks over there, I got fed up. I was eating at the table. Incidentally, the table manners were taught by a lady. the only female in the establishment, apart from her daughter, which was about 4 years old. And all the rest were males. Anyway, one night I was eating dinner, I just took the fork, spared the piece of meat, small as it was, and started nibbling on it. And she noticed, said, "Matthew, what are you doing?" I said, "Well, we have been told how to eat the French way, the Italian way, the British way, the Russian way, the Japanese way. Tonight I just want to eat." Obviously my argument was irrefutable, and she didn't make any further comments. So this was another item that was not taught in other high schools, how to behave at the table. And if you find yourself in a foreign country, in a foreign environment, you knew how to behave, how to eat. You know, there was a number of sort of subjects that I have been taught that are not taught in ordinary high schools. So that explains why they wanted me to go to a nominated school. In the meantime, every school holiday I took a trip home, visit my mother, and narrated a story about the school, about travels, etc. And on one occasion, I was going back to the school. We were traveling on the train through Essen, and it was shortly after an air raid. The train was going very, very slowly, and everything was blacked out. You know, we had to pull the blinds down, and the lights went out. But through the crack between the blind and the window, I saw one factory going full blast with arc welding. And they had a skylight. Well, you can see this for miles. I said to the fellow sitting opposite me, "Why aren't they blacked out?" "Oh," he says, "that's Krupp." I didn't dare to ask any more. Krupp were exempt. Huh? So they bombed everything around, but they left Krupp works alone. Now Krupp was producing war material, tanks, cannons, submarines, ship parts, you name it. It was heavy industry. And they were working 24 hours a day. So eventually, after some months in the school, they found that the disruption of air raids, almost nightly air raids, was interfering with our education, so we transferred to Czechoslovakia. And the place they have selected, they were waiting for the premises to be renovated to suit our requirements. And it turned out the place was Bad Podiebrad, or in Czech, Lazně Poděbrady. And the castle was the venue. It was the birthplace of the Wenceslas kings of Bohemia, all for the benefit of some 40 youngsters. Anyway, we lived there happily and had a variety of tuitions. And my favorite pastimes was dealing with explosives. Mind you, they were of the general sort of grade, with nitrogen-based explosives. And there was a fountain. It was called Bad Podiebrad because they had a spring which had sulfur in it. And they had a fountain which constantly flowing water in a beaker there. And I tasted it. Sulfur flavored water did not appeal to me. Anyway, every school holiday I took a trip home, and that was packed with quite a lot of adventure too. Because in the wartime, a train was reserved for the army personnel. Just 2 carriages for civilians. And they were packed to the gills. And for the military, just sitting at accommodation. So on one occasion, going after the holidays, going back to Prague, I looked at the civilian carriages, and they were just packed full. I couldn't squeeze in spite of the small stature. So I decided to venture into the, I think, first or second class of the military carriages. So I very politely put my bag on the outside, and the military policeman came and said, "If you can't find a sitting place, out!" And the door opened over the compartment, and one of the officers said, "Well, come in, youngster, we have space for you. Don't take any notice of them." I don't think military police are liked anywhere in the world. So there were just 5 of them in the compartment for 6. So they made room for me at the window. And I remember 2 of them were pilots. I remember their ranks. One of them was a lieutenant, one of them was captain, one of them was higher ranking Oberst. I can't think of the English equivalent at the moment. And the other 2 belonged to the anti-aircraft system. And they had similar uniforms, except their lapels were different colors. Anyway, I was feted and given chocolate, something that only the pilots had during the war. And the fellow sitting opposite me was in a black uniform with a band across his sleeve. What was the, it was an elite group, Leibstandarte Deutschland, which is similar to the special units we have in Britain, who were the Busbies. Anyway, I spoke to him a few times. He didn't respond. But, you know, youngsters at this age are very persuasive. And I managed to get him to talk. And his German was very, very poor. I said, "Where do you come from? Where were you born?" He was born in Romania. I said, "Romania, what are you doing in the Leibstandarte?" He said, he looked at me, he said, he was a big man. He looked at me and said, "Well, we are used only infrequently. But when we are used, there's only one way we can go forward. There's no way for us to come back." Anyway, I got him talking. Everybody else was talking. I was fated with chocolate and variety of other goodies that I haven't seen for a long time. And one of the pilots says to me, I said, where are you heading for? Oh, he said, Warsaw. I said, I know Warsaw. I was born there. Officially, I was born in Warsaw. In actuality, I was born in Krakow. Anyway, that's, you were a German born in Warsaw. I said, no. I was Polish, born in Warsaw. By the time the train entered the Prague station, and I was going out, they handed me my bag, and they were quite stunned by my reply. And when I went outside with four of them, looking out through the window with their mouth wide open, they have just fated a Polish boy. Anyway, that was one of the excursions, one of the adventures that I had. Of this, there's a plethora. And on one particular occasion, I went home on holidays, and I found an aircraft that was downed. The Germans had in the fighter aircraft 20mm cannons. It was a German fighter that was downed. So I picked up the shell with the explosive unit, and I wanted to test the difference, what a synthetic explosive does. And I did it in a shed at the back of the house in the garden. And the shed was full of kindling wood. So I packed the cartridge with the synthetic explosive, made a fuse, and lit the fuse. And a voice came in my head. It said, "Don't do it here, you'll burn down the shed." Perfectly logical. So I took it out with a fuse burning. I knew I had 2 minutes. I put it behind a pear tree. "Oh, don't do it there, the tree may fall and hurt someone." Nonsense. That pear tree was about 150 years old, was about 150 foot high, and it was at least 2 foot at the base. However, the voice was so commanding that I could not disobey. So I took the cartridge and I was going to throw it down the outside dunning. The voice said, "Don't throw it there, you blow up the dunning." Now, nonsense. Because the accumulated dung would have dampened the explosion. Nothing would have happened. But again, I could not resist the command of the voice. So I went to the back of the house and put the cartridge next to the concrete stairs. And, "Oh, don't leave it there, somebody might come through the lane and get hurt." Nonsense. This lane was utilized about once a month by the, if you like it, by a person. But again, I could not disobey the command value. So I took it inside, and in the kitchen, which was the nearest space, it exploded. And I copped 13 pieces of shrapnel. So I came into the living room, dripping blood. My mother was in shock. Anyway, I lay down on the couch, and I just heard somebody outside calling a young girl. Said, "Matthew just shot himself." Anyway, the first one to arrive was the priest. This village, incidentally, happened to be Catholic. The next village was Protestant. The next village was Catholic. Anyway, the priest came and gave me last rites. What's interesting about it, that I was never baptized, but I had last rites. Anyway, the doctor came and he bandaged me up, etc., etc. I lost a lot of blood. And around about midnight, the ambulance arrived to take me to the Ulm hospital. The distance was about 33, 35 kilometers. And I think this ambulance has seen First World War. But it was very uncomfortable, very bumpy. So much so that my mother got sick. They had to stop for her to vomit. And it was so rickety that through a particular wound in my right chest, air came in. My lung collapsed. So I was delivered eventually to the hospital. They couldn't give me anesthetic. They couldn't give me anything at all. They just extracted some air and blood from my left lung from the back. By the time I couldn't speak. But I remember the doctor. She was about 4'8". She wore high heels. They were thick platforms. And her hair was done up in a Busby style to make up for the lack of height. But she was brilliant. You know, she gave me whatever she could. And they bandaged me up and put me in the room. So whilst in the room, this hospital, incidentally, was run by Lutheran nuns. And there were two of them in the doorway, bemoaning the fact such a young boy so badly hurt. Anyway, I had enough of the chatter. Next to my bedside table, the only thing I could move is my right arm, and I could see through my right eye. I grabbed the beaker, a heavy beaker with water, and just threw at them. And as it happened, it sailed in between their noses. It didn't hit either of them. But they vanished. So they left me in peace, and I died. The experience is very interesting to narrate, inasmuch that, contrary to other near-death experiencer, I didn't go anywhere. Things just moved away from me. The room disappeared, the hospital disappeared, the whole planet disappeared, and they were like waves of energy. You know, like you throw a pebble in the water, the waves move out, and there were hundreds of them. Finally, the light disappeared. And after that, the darkness disappeared. And I was in a space which is undescribable. I was aware of things, and yet they were somewhere else. And I was aware of my body somewhere. And I make a consideration or postulate this body will do. What for, I still haven't got a clue. The space I was in was impossible to describe, but it felt good. Anyway, after I made this postulate that this body will do, all things started coming back together. First the darkness came, then the light came, then the waves, concentric waves, started to come in. Each wave consisted with a knowledge or an awareness of something. So eventually the planet Earth appeared, the hospital appeared, or came towards me. My body appeared, and I interiorized in the body. And the first time in 30-odd hours, I became unconscious. I fell asleep. My next recollection was that I was in the body and I saw a bright light, a blinding white light in an oblong shape. And through this light came a woman. And she approached me. That light came from a doorway because I was in a mortuary. And she came over to me. What her intention was, I'm not quite sure, but I said to her, I'm thirsty and I'm hungry. There was an almighty shriek, and she disappeared through the light, and the light disappeared. I thought, well, the surface of this hotel is not very nice at all. After some time that seemed to be like eternity, the door opened, the light came on, and she came with a bloke in tow. And he leaned over me and said, oh, he lives. I said, I know I am alive, but I'm thirsty and I'm hungry. Again, they disappeared. And I said, this is on the nose. After a while, again, it seemed to me like eternity. They came back, and I was given 3 teaspoonfuls of tepid tea. Now you know why I stick to coffee. Anyway, after that, I was transferred to the general ward, and the doctor, the ward doctor, was a tall fellow. He was about 2 meters tall. He was referred to by the locals as the devil. He was trained in the Franco Spanish War. You might remember the Germans sent not only aircraft, but also doctors and nurses to be trained in the field. He was one of them. He was absolutely brilliant. As I was delivered to the ward, he said to me, don't try to get out of bed because you'll drop dead. So I looked at him. The only thing I could move is my right arm. Everything else was bandaged up. But after, I think 9 days in bed, I had enough. I decided to get up. Now, the hospital beds are fairly high, and I had to sort of slide down the bed. Anyway, there was what is fondly called a gallows. There was a surgical ward, and there was a vacant area where the bed was, with a frame, a bar across that was on legs over the bed, is to help the patient to lift himself up if he was in plaster or whatever. So the bar was just about 3 or 4 inches above my reach. Nevertheless, I managed to jump up and do pull-ups. And as I was in the middle of it, I managed 5, incidentally. The doctor and the nurse collided in the doorways. "Matthew, what are you doing?" So I was just trying out to see how many times I can pull myself up. I could do it 50 times without getting puffed. All I could do is 5. Anyway, he picked me up, put me into bed, carried me into bed. He said, "Don't do it again." I said, "I had enough of my bed. I want to get up." So I said, "Okay, tomorrow you can get up." So I was his assistant. He was about 2 meters tall. I came up to his waist. And he called me garden gnome. So he, with his trolley and the paraphernalia on it, I used to be his assistant. I had eventually the freedom of the whole hospital, including the operating theater. And I was kept in the hospital for about 9 weeks. And I was an exhibit for visiting doctors. He who refused to die. It was quite an interesting experience because we know that the Germans hated everybody and everybody hated Germans. However, in the hospital, a patient was a patient, regardless of his creed, nationality, or social status. And on our ward, there were 6 Frenchmen who were forced laborers. They were working on the railway, and when the railway was bombed, they got phosphorus bombs delivered, and it went over their hands. The hands were raw. So this doctor was called the devil. Used to change the bandage every day. Raw hands, there's no skin on them. He made them exercise. They were crying in pain. He made them exercise. He wrapped each finger separately with a special sort of salve. And one of them died. He had burns to more than just his hands. And the other 5 survived. And they regained the function of their hands. And another 6, they were in a different ward, a different doctor, who just bound their fingers together. They didn't, their fingers were fused. So he might have had the nickname of the devil, but as a doctor, he was brilliant. And one of these days, one day, he said to me, he said, "You know, we haven't done anything for you. You have lost a lot of blood, more than 50%. And the fact that you are alive is not our doing. Now, there is a chapel. If you want to say thank you to someone, you go there and say thank you to God." Now, he himself belonged to the SS, and the SS did not believe in any form of religious affiliations or expressions. So that was an advice from the devil himself. So I had 2 favorite nurses there, and they looked after me. And they also had a young boy, older than I, he was about 16, a Russian. And he was also a forced laborer. He was working on the railways. And as he was leaning across two buffers, the locomotive came in and his penis was crushed in between the buffers. So he was in great pain. And they tried to give him an injection to dull his pain. And his skin, his body, when he saw the syringe, became as hard as marble. I would not have believed, have I not seen it. I have heard that some martial masters in Taiwan can make their skin so hard that a samurai sword bounces off. But to me that was a story, and here I saw it. The sharp needle of the syringe just bounced off. They tried several times. Finally, they said, "We give up." His name was Ivan. He didn't speak any German. My Russian was questionable. However, at least I spoke a few words in his language. "Ivan, I give you the injection." "Oh," he says, "it hurts." So I said to the nurses, "Give me the syringe." And I mean, it couldn't possibly happen in the hospital today. But out of sheer bewilderment, they surrendered the syringe. I said, "Ivan, I'm going to give it to you. It won't hurt a bit, I promise." It was intramuscular in the leg. So I just jabbed him slightly. I said, "Ivan, did it hurt?" "No." In it went. So he was taken by surprise with the nurses. Anyway, he got his injection and he was able to, if you like, have his pain minimized. So I could narrate a lot of stories that happened in the hospital over a period of 9 weeks. However, I was later released. Mother came every day bringing me a beetroot extract. Now she was a pharmacist of the old school, and she knew what I required. And she was there every day, a journey of 30-odd kilometers on a train. So eventually, after 9 weeks, I came home. The suggestion was that I drink a lot of milk to make up for the loss of blood and stamina. Well, I didn't like milk. I wouldn't drink milk since I was 4 years old or less. So the suggestion was that if I were to milk my own cow, I would be able to drink that milk. So I said, okay, I'll give it a go. So there was a milkmaid sitting on a three-legged stool. She started milking. It was already about a liter or two in a bucket. And I said, "You take over." I grabbed the tits, and the cow looked around at me, shook her head, swished me over the head with her tail, and kicked the bucket over. But that was the end of my milking experience. Cows don't like me. Mind you, they don't mind if I ride them. In Germany, all the horses were sequestered by the army. So the farmers had to utilize cows for carting and riding. Now, have you ever ridden a cow? The spine, unlike horses' spines, are inverted. You have the muscles outside. In a cow, the spine is protruding. So they had to have special saddles, like 2 parts to the saddle either side of the spine. Now, to ride a cow, it's a very beneficent and benevolent experience. You don't have the reins. You have just one rope that leads to her mouth or nostril. The cow knows instinctively where we want to go. The gait is very smooth. They can jump, and they can jump 3-foot fences, and they don't damage the others. How they do it, I don't know, but riding the cow, being a cowboy, is an experience. So they don't mind my riding them, but milking them, no. So I stayed at home for about a couple of months or so before I went back to school. So on the way to school, it was already sort of 1940. It happened in the last day of August 1944 at approximately 3 o'clock in the afternoon, where the Big Bang was. So I stayed at home for about 2 months or so. I went back to school after that. So due to the almost constant air raids, the trains were not running along the traditional lines that were quite often diverted. And on this particular occasion, the train was diverted through Dresden. Now, Dresden had a air raid alarm, so the train was diverted through a different line, about 10 kilometers away from Dresden. And then it stopped, and I saw Dresden being bombed. That was a very interesting experience. Anyway, I had a deal with the daughter of the mayor of the village, and she said, if I get a telegram saying mother's very sick, please come home, you know what it is. Because the Russian front was already in Poland. So the Germans were in retreat. It was 1945. So I got to school. I got a lot of sort of sympathy from the masters, playing with the explosives. And I had a huge wad of money on me. So why do you need so much money? I said, well, there were some films to buy. I might be able to get a new camera, because the camera I had was a Mark I Retina, which I got for my birthday in 1938. I still got the camera, incidentally. And I was very keen on photography, and I won the 3rd prize for this particular region. So they accepted my excuse, but I said, well, we keep the money in a safe. If you need it, you come and see me. So one night, about 11 o'clock, I was already in bed. One of the masters came in. He said, "There's a telegram from your mother. She's very sick. Please come home." So next day, I caught a train to Prague, got an express train, and went as far as the border. The whole train was shot up. So I had the presence of mind of getting under the mail car, because I knew the mail car has a steel bottom and steel roof and a lot of things inside. So also the mail car was behind the engine that was completely shot up. It was the safest place. So after the air raid, they managed to scramble again another train. All sorts of carriages. I think they got it from a museum. The buffers were ill-fitting. There was not a scrap of glass in the windows. And they took off like a bullet, like a rocket, until they came to a tunnel, when they came to a screeching halt. At the time, the Americans were very fond of using fighter aircraft in formation of age to shoot up any transport, anything that was moving. And they used to throw out leaflets from time where they, in German, in translation, means we are the happy age. We fly every day and every night, and anything that moves, they destroy. So this particular train, ill-fitted, it was like, when it was on the go, it was like in a cocktail shaker. So you couldn't sit, you couldn't stand, you couldn't do anything, you just grabbed onto something while it was going through. And then it stopped in the tunnel. They had to look out to see whether the fighter aircraft was there. If they went, it went on for another trip. The tunnels there in Thüringen is they're about 20, 30 kilometers apart. So it was a hair-raising journey in between the tunnels. But eventually, we got to Nuremberg. Nuremberg was just after air raid. So the train stopped short of the town, of the city, and I had to walk. And I sat on my suitcase in front of a burning flower store, a stone building, burning. And the 100-kilogram flower sacks just exploded through the roof like fireworks. It was a very interesting spectacle. And I remember eating my last bread roll. And when the fire subsided, I went through the town to pick up another train on the other side. So it was also an old train, but it was going the right directions. So I got there about 4 o'clock in the morning, found the train, laid on a wooden bench, and fell asleep. And I woke up to voices in Ukrainian. I sat up, looked at them, they are in German uniforms, speaking Ukrainian. They were members of Vlasov's army. Have you heard about the Vlasov's army? Well, just a slight digression. Do you want to finish it off in a minute? Okay. General Vlasov surrendered the whole army to the Germans because the Ukrainians hated the Russians more than they hated the Germans. Sentiments which are still reflected today. So the whole army moved over to the German side. However, the Germans didn't trust the Ukrainians, so they didn't have any weapons, they didn't wear any sidearms. They were utilized by the Todt organization, which were making repairs to railways, etc., etc. Sappers. So anyway, when I woke up, I realized what the Ukrainian language was about, and made room for them, and off we went towards a place called Aryan. We traveled about an hour or so because the Happy Eight found us, and they destroyed the engine. Now, the train was in a escarpment, so there were about 20, 30 foot high escarpments either side. So I just looked around and see which side of the forest has the biggest trees. So I discovered that on the right-hand side with the thickest tree, and that's where I went. And the pilots haven't quite finished with us. I found the thickest fir tree I could find, which is about a foot and a bit in diameter, and danced around it. They split up into fours and came from different sides. So I saw the bullets flying all over the place, and I copped a few empty shells on my back as well. However, I survived. Other people were paralyzed with fear. So when there was a lull in shelling, I grabbed my bag. It was undamaged. I was undamaged. And I was just curious why I appeared to be right in the center of the attention of a fighter aircraft. And I discovered on the way out towards the road that there was a motorized unit, a German army unit, camouflaged just next to it. And they must have known about it. They tried to get the German unit, but they managed to miss it. At the time I paddled up with another young man. He was about 16 and already in the reserves, so he was carrying a rifle. So we strung the rifle through the handle of my bag and started marching along the road towards Aryan. And there was a clearing in the forest, and the road was slightly elevated, about a meter, 2 meters. And the only thing that was on the side of the road is milestones. Every half a kilometer there was like a stone about, say, 3 foot high or thereabouts. And we were happily going, marching along the road towards Aryan, because the train was finished. And we saw the fighter aircraft reappearing on the horizon. And they split into fours. There were 8 in formation. And they split into fours. Then they split into twos. And the 2 split up, and 1 came straight for us. So there was no way to hide. So I said to the fellow, whatever you do, don't break step. So we are just marching there, and I saw the pilots in the wrong side of the visors. It was very, very low. And I think I waved to him with the left hand. And he just didn't have the courage to press the button. So we marched on. And eventually, we finished up in Aryan, or Aryan Station. And the Red Cross, they had something warm in the pot, a beetroot soup, and a coffee made out of the roasted rye grain or wheat grain or something, which tasted horrible, but it was something warm, and the first thing that I had to get something to eat since midnight. The train that was assembled for me had the locomotive that I think was borrowed from a museum, one of those long chimneys up front. I split up with my friend because he was going towards Stuttgart, and I was going towards Ulm. Anyway, after nightfall, which was the safe time to travel, or safer time to travel, the train took off. And eventually I disembarked in Niederstossingen, and at 6 o'clock in the morning, I came home. Mother was quite overjoyed to see me in one piece. So the journey took a long time. It was full of adventure, but I managed to arrive home. And when I got home, the first thing I did was dye my uniform, school uniform, and put on civil clothes, because the American army was just nearby. And we saw the first Americans arriving about 3 weeks, less than 3 weeks after I got home. Now, the interesting side issue that I want to mention to you happened much later. It was in 1957 or something of this nature. There was a group of loyals in Western Australia who did a class claim for people who were forced laborers. So I filled in the form for my mother. She was a forced laborer of sorts. She was working in a hard mud factory. For whatever reason, she was there. So I filled in the details, set it in, and eventually she got a compensation of $4,500. Now, my mother said to me, "Why don't you make a claim?" I said, "What the hell for? For having had the best education the Third Reich can offer?" But my wife sort of said, "Well, just for fun, you send in your claim." So eventually I did. The lawyers were in Albany, and you know where Albany is. Okay. So I had a letter from the lawyers saying, can I claim that my injury happened when I was in school? I said, no, I can't. So in this case, he said, the likelihood you claim is plus minus 0. Okay, that's fine. A month later, a letter arrives from the United States. The letter bears just one sentence in German, saying the claim is unprovable, but believable, and an enclosed check for $15,000, which was twice as much as Mother got for being a forced laborer. The biggest pay anyone ever got. Now, arrangement with the lawyers is that if the claim was successful, you pay them a commission. It was about $200 or something about. And I was very happy to pay them the $200 and put the money in the bank and spend it in the meantime. I found a reasonable hole for him. But somehow there is an official validation that my story is not fictitious. So going back to the incidentally, about 12, 15 kilometers in a direct line where I was living in the village with my mother, there wasn't an experimental research airfield for the from, I think, Messerschmitt. And this was underground. On top, there was a dummy airfield, aircraft made out of plywood. That appeared to be an airfield from above. And that was visited by the American Air Force at least once a week. They destroyed the mock-up planes. They were replaced. Now, from this airfield, air base, whatever you call it, I saw the first jet fighter aircraft. It's going back in 1944. Whenever I told the story that I saw the first German jet aircraft, or Matthew and his told stories. Now, it is available on the internet. They actually show you the aircraft. It's MA-242 or 246. And I saw it in action in 1944. So there are a variety of other German inventions, both military and others, that have been taken over by the Americans and kept secret. The stealth bomber that the Americans are proud of, the Germans had it first. Never saw action because they were very short on the fuel, but it was there, complete and tested. There was a variety of other tests by, you heard of Victor Schauberger? You haven't. It's worthwhile looking up his biography on the internet. He was an Austrian. In 1934, he was invited by Adolf to join the research team in Germany. He declined. But in 1938, I think, when Austria was annexed, the whole thing was Germany. Victor Schauberger was sequestered. He didn't have much to say. He had to join the research team. Now, one of the Schauberger's dictum was that the physics as we know is only one side. It's like one-sided coin. His inventions were obverse to it. And he talked about the power of implosion rather than the power of explosion. And there was an aircraft that the Germans built that was propelled by implosion. Now, there's a long story to it, but most of this is now available on the internet. The whole principle of the Aryan race, the purification of breeding back to the origin, is something that was available on internet some years ago. They started a research long before Adolf became a chancellor. They sent special expedition to Poland way back in 1932, looking for the Aryan characteristic. So the whole concept of the race purification preceded Adolf and ascension to power. That was available a few years back. Now I can't find it. I was interested to see whether my name is somewhere. I've been told that my portrait was hanging in the honor place in the Adolf Hitler Schule, which I declined. I want to know whether it is still in existence. And I got so much information, and finally there was a remark, if I need any more specific information, I would have to present myself in person at the archives in Potsdam. They are available. Recently, in the last few years, that vanished from the internet. It's no longer there. But in its stead, you have information about the Thule Society, which was a background to the whole so-called Nazi movement. You had the Vril Society, which was responsible for the technological development. Now, what might be of interest is the German technology was far in advance of British or American technology. The Germans had the atom bomb, not in production fully, because they were lagging behind time. You might wonder why Germany invaded Russia at a time which no general would contemplate it. They have learned a lesson from Napoleon that Russian winters are bitter, yet the German army, ill-equipped as far as the clothing is concerned, went there. Why? Only recently it came to light that Stalin had a reciprocal plan to invade Europe. And Hitler's invasion of Russia beat him by about 4 weeks. Had Adolf delayed his Russian expedition, or his Russian invasion, Stalin would have invaded Poland and Germany. Now, there's a lot of interesting bits and pieces that come. For some reason, I knew this information at the time, but I couldn't prove it. Whenever I mentioned something like the German jet fighter in action, I met with a blank stare, disbelief. Matthew is making up stories. Now it is validated. So I told you my own personal experience, something I have experienced in person. What I haven't touched on is the peripheral reasons for this, that, and the other. That perhaps might be of interest to you in a session at another time. Because I think that you are running out of time. It's you got 5 minutes left on the recorder. So the only thing I can say that of personal experience is that about 3 weeks after the final journey home, the Americans arrived. And they still had an eye on this particular airfield. So they brought up the heavy artillery and shot the hell out of it. Now the shells went over the house. And it was a 48 hours bombardment. What was lucky for us, that this particular American unit consisted of people who were of Polish origin. In America, when they conscripted the soldiers, they took the whole suburb as a unit. And this particular unit happened to be a Polish settlement in America. So mother was delighted because she could speak Polish to them, and they were quite frequent visitors to our place. So there are a few adventures at a time which are sort of insignificant. And after that, we were transferred to a DP camp. So this was a transition from a wartime to a so-called peaceful time. When we were members of the DP camp, there are a few transports of Poles who were repatriated to Poland. And amongst them, there were 80,000 children repatriated who were in the race program. There were many more who stayed behind. Many of those children were taken when they were very young, and many of them didn't even speak Polish anymore. So how they managed to find the relatives and reunite them, I don't know. But I know there were 80,000. And after that, the Americans said, holds the repatriation process, because Poland is in the hands of Soviets. It's under the Soviet regime, and repatriated Poles are not looked upon benignly. They are regarded as traitors, because according to the Soviet policy, which was a parallel to the German policy, you do not become a prisoner. And anyone who came from Germany, there were 6 million people there, mainly from the East, and they were regarded in Poland as traitors. So I had a letter from Poland that I should not return, because being in the race program, I would have been a traitor number one. So eventually, we spent a few years in the KDP camps, and that again is a very interesting saga in my story. However, the time is running out, so we'll end this on a happy note. Time for refreshments. And if you wish to continue some more, to hear more of my story, you're welcome.